there were conservation messages that we hammered home for decades that had a very specific purpose of growing wild populations of whatever, deer and turkey primarily in Oklahoma. And we hammered those messages home, and we accomplished what those messages were meant to accomplish, so much so now that we're having to change the message. And, you know, you mentioned the North American conservation model, which is phenomenal and it's unique compared to the rest of the world. And that primarily hinges on using hunters as the primary management tool. Mm-hmm. You know, in Oklahoma, and I know every state, Ohio, Texas, wherever, you're manipulating hunter success through regulation. Mm-hmm. Now, for some people, government's just a bad word, no matter how you spell it, and they don't like it, and it's oppressive, and it's the man bringing me down, all that. But these regulations, hunting regulations, are specifically designed to achieve certain objectives.
Mm-hmm. This is the Aptitude Outdoors podcast, where we interview conservationists, hunters, anglers, and outdoorsmen and women to bring you the greatest stories, information, and advice from the best in the world. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Aptitude Outdoors podcast. Thanks for tuning back in. Today, our special guest is the one and only host of Outdoor Oklahoma, Mr. Todd Craighead. He's one hell of a hunter. He loves taking care of his Jeep and rock crawling and all this crazy stuff. He's just such an inspirational dude. He is a great public speaker. He's great at mentoring people and getting people into the outdoors. And he's just a cool guy to call a friend. If you go back a few episodes ago, he gave a presentation about mentorship and getting people into hunting that show interest. Very awesome. I would highly recommend checking that out if you haven't already. We also have a few years ago, we had an episode with Todd Craighead. It was a little short. It was one of my favorite episodes. And we talk a lot about his past and how he got into hunting. And it's really great episode that is one of the ones that has taught me the most over time. And he's also in a short mini doc that I made a few years ago at the very first Hunt Fish Podcast Summit called West Texas Turkey Hunt, which you can find on the Aptitude Outdoors Podcast YouTube channel. I will link that in the show notes below. I'll link all of them in the show notes below so you can check them out if you haven't already. And before we get too far into it, the one and only Mr. Todd Craighead. But first, a quick word from our sponsors. I'm a huge fanatic for handmade, high-quality leather and canvas products. In my opinion, they last longer, hold up better to the abuses of travel, and honestly, they just look really cool. That's why I use Badger Claw Outfitters. They've been making handcrafted products for hunting, camping, and travel since 2011, and that's right up my alley. Best part is they're made right here in the USA and are guaranteed for life. They've got everything from gun leather, belts, custom knife sheaths, wallets, duffel bags, leather and canvas pouches, everyday carry items, and more. Badger Claw Outfitters, made in the USA, built for the wild. This episode was recorded live at the 2023 Hunt Fish Podcast Summit, where podcasters and guests from across the country come together to talk about their passions for hunting, fishing, and conservation. This year's summit is brought to you by Waypoint TV, Ron Hoover Marine of Galveston, Spot Stalker Guide Service, the Wild Sheep Foundation, Galveston Fishing Company, Captain Experiences, and Badger Claw Outfitters.
Todd, it's been, 2 years since we've last seen each other? And I would say to date, your last podcast is one of my favorites. I learned a lot from you. And I would like to think that I've grown as a hunter from the time that we met.
Absolutely.
Because if you remember, it was my first ever turkey hunt.
Yeah.
Probably like my third hunt of all time. And I was terrified when we were hunting together. So what have you been up to in the last 2 years? It's good to see you again, man.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm just living the dream, and get to do what I love, and that's somewhat rare in society today. So I don't want to ever take that for granted. But going on hunts like what I did with you, that was rejuvenating for me, as well. because that first morning we heard that gobble, and I don't know, it was still on the roost, and it was like a half a mile away. And I looked over, and your gun was shouldered, and you were shaking, like, it's going to happen right now. And I was like, you need to chill. This could be hours, You're going to have an aneurysm or faint or something if you keep this up. But still, just your excitement level for experiencing something new, that's really what keeps me going. I love that more so than anything else.
Well, I've found that too, now that I have the opportunity to like take out people that haven't hunted before. Mm-hmm. I'm the guy showing them what to do, which is a terrifying thought.
That is weird. Do you tell them on the first gobble, get your gun up?
Yeah. Freak out right now.
Start shaking.
It's just so rewarding to get that experience. It's more rewarding than hunting. And I understand why people say that now. Because when I first started, that's what everybody said. They're like, once you get somebody else into it and see them do their first thing, I'm like, I haven't even done this yet. I want to do it. But after you've hunted enough things, you're like, I totally understand. I totally get it. So you're a really, really good turkey hunter. You have a lot of experience hunting turkeys. You have a lot of experience hunting a lot of things. You television show host for Oklahoma's outdoor stuff for years and years and years and years. And you get a lot of experiences that probably most people don't get, because we won't lie, doing stuff like this, we were privileged. We get to do a lot of privileged things. But I think one of the things I've been learning over the last few years as a still new hunter, I'll always be a new hunter because I'll always be learning, but I think new hunting can be intimidating for a lot of people. That's what I've been finding. They get a lot of questions, and not everybody's me who just jumps off a cliff and hopes that they land at the bottom. Yeah. What, over your lifetime of hunting experience and doing the show, Outdoor Oklahoma, what do you have for new hunters advice-wise? Because it's so scary for people to get started. There's just a huge wall to overcome, it feels like. Right.
Well, I think that, it's not just a hunch or a speculation. Social science proves that the vast majority of hunters got started because of one particular person's influence on them. Mm-hmm. Now, you and I could name off a dozen other examples that have come into hunting in a non-traditional pathway, but the majority start when they're young, and it's because somebody invited them. Mm-hmm. And so when we're talking adult onset hunters,
it sounds like a disease. I know when they say that, it cracks me up.
Adult onset hunters, I think that what you need, not you personally, but what a person that's interested in hunting needs to do is literally say the words, hey, would you take me? Mm-hmm. Invite yourself on an open-end invitation. Say, I desperately want to know. If you could ask somebody, and that shouldn't, I feel bad because as a society, that shouldn't be your job. Mm-hmm. We as the hunters should be looking for new recruits, and doing the asking. But if that's not happening, find out who in your circle of influence hunts and ask them. That's the biggest thing. You need someone to spend some quality time with you, one-on-one, out there learning the ropes. A mentor and an apprentice. Those are kind of bland terminologies and words, but you need a buddy that knows what they're doing to help give you a jump start. And if no one's inviting you, invite yourself. Yeah. Don't be afraid to do that. Yeah, there are lots of pathways that people have come to it non-traditionally, like kind of you in a way. It's like, I don't care if I fall flat on my face. I'm just going to try it, and just do it and learn trial by error. But not everybody's you, know.
Lucky for them. Yeah. Good for them.
But, I do realize that it's intimidating. Mm-hmm. There's so much that you feel that could either go wrong or that you don't know. There's many times there's firearms,
which is really intimidating for a lot of people.
Yes, that if you don't have experience with that, growing up around them or anything like that, that's a huge wall to overcome. But there are, if you've already got that spark and your interest is piqued, there are resources out there, obviously the internet, podcasts and programs that people can attend, that kind of thing. But the vast majority of hunters are hunters today because of the influence of one individual.
Yeah, and I've personally experienced that. I mean, I have people that I've gotten interested in hunting because they're around me. Because I'm like a one-man machine who's just like, that's all I talk about. Pete drives everyone insane. It's not just the podcast. It's not just like, when I go anywhere, we'll be like, hey, look at the zoo. I'm like, did you know that the American model of conservation is funded? And they're just like, will you shut up?
That's awesome.
And I'd say it's a weird thing because I was in that weird hippie, because I just like the planet. I like the environment. I like wildlife. I like going to spaces that are outdoors. And I've always just had this experience of it just being the place that I enjoy most. I would rather be outside than anywhere. And I don't know why. It's one of those things, like some people really like to play the piano. Yeah. That's the outdoors for me. And I started down this path in college, and this isn't really a knock on colleges. Professors are going to teach what they want to teach, but going through an anthropology degree, and especially like the environmental focus on that, is this big push to, not that we don't have to have self-accountability. We do have to have self-accountability. There's this big push that it's like, it's my fault that I was born and I eat food and I have to drive a car to my job. You know what I mean? Like that's a big message that's out there for a lot of people. And I'm a person who, I don't believe everything I hear. When I very much challenge a lot of the things that I think. And I believe that for a long time. I believed for a very long time that it was my fault and I had to do everything in my power to do as little impact here and there and whatever. And I still believe that to an extent. I'm in that boat a little bit. But it was always hunting was a bad thing because you're killing something, you're taking a life of an animal, and that's a bad thing. You're a bad person for doing that. But then I started hanging around people like Derek and you and people that live in this world, and it changed my perspective totally. And then I started learning about conservation. Like the first time we met, I didn't really know that much about conservation. I knew kind of hunting and conservation were together, and I went down the rabbit hole. And I'm like, I ethically, morally, philosophically have found nothing more enticing to me than hunting, because the whole model, with its flaws and all, is the closest you can get to being a well-rounded human being.
Yeah.
And the death part was always the worst part for me. But and it's still not the greatest part. I mean, killing something's never fun. You've been doing this a long time. And it's like, there's a moment where it's like, okay. But when it's over, it becomes really fulfilling. And I found that it's changed my life so much. It's taken me to places that I've never gotten to go. And I don't think people think about that side of it. They get latched onto the certain points, the death point, they think we all just have this bloodlust. And none of the people I've ever met have been like that. I know those people exist. Sure. There's rednecks out there that just like to kill stuff. There's always bad eggs. But do you find, you have much more experience than me. You've run an outdoor show about hunting and fishing for decades, Do you find that hunters generally are helpful, thoughtful people? Or is it like, how often do you run into the bad egg,
They stick out because it was a sour experience or whatever. But you're right that I don't know a percentage, but let's just say for every bad egg, there's 12 dozen, really good ones. And when I've got people, it's been really enlightening for me over the years when I think about my motivations for hunting and why I hunted. And so now when I'm approached by people or I'm targeting someone, I've identified someone that I think might be open to it. And if they say, yeah, I think I could kind of go on a hunt, I ask them what their expectations are and why they want to hunt. My daughter's a great example. She's 24 now, but when she was little, she went with me, but it wasn't really about the hunt. It was just about being out, and and getting the fun camo clothes and just, not being around mom or other adults and just having fun. But at 19, she came to me and said, Dad, I don't fall over, but I think I want a deer hunt. Inside I'm trying to compose myself.
Yeah, don't cry.
This is the most, I'm so proud. But, I was like, okay, so tell me why you want to hunt. Because I want to tailor-make your experience to suit and match your expectations. So I said, do you want to hunt because it's just something you want to check off a bucket list and do once and you're one and done? Is it more about the camping and cooking on a campfire and being outside for the weekend? Is it, what is it? Or you just want one on the wall? And she goes, no, those would all be fringe benefits, but really I want the venison to cook with. I was like joking with her. I said, man, that takes a lot of pressure off me because every deer has venison inside it.
That's a good bonus.
Yeah. So that was great. And lo and behold, her first deer was a big, giant 9-point buck that we did mount and put on the wall.
With who her dad is, I'm not surprised.
But I think that's important, whatever side of the coin you're on, whether you're the one this is piquing your interest, or you're the hunter that is looking for an opportunity to pass it on. You need to drill down deep and find out why you want to be a hunter. What is it about hunting that appeals to you? I have a buddy one of my best friends that, and he's hunted for as long as I've known him, 25 years or so, and he's my lease partner. I mean, we do all kinds of stuff together, but we started out kind of as hunting buddies. And in all these years, he's harvested 2 deer. He's probably hunted as much as I have. Only 2 deer. And man, I even want to be careful how I word that only, because he loves it. He doesn't give a flip whether he shoots a deer or not. And part of me, the older I get, part of me begins to really admire and appreciate and respect that attitude that he has, that it's not about the hunt. I'm more interested in just being out here and seeing it. Last year he sent me video on his phone. We were in different hunting blinds a couple hundred yards apart. Are you seeing anything? He sends me this video of this pretty nice 9-point. In fact, the night before, I had sit in his blind and I didn't get a shot at this deer. I had a cluster that I totally messed up and a little meltdown kind of moment, and I didn't get a shot off. And I was just so aggravated. And if I'd had hair, I'd pull my hair out kind of thing, And Dwayne videos that deer for 10 minutes at 30 yards, And so I asked him we've got this friendship where we can, be very blunt and honest. And I said, Dwayne, you got a house full of hunting gear. You've sunk a lot of money into this. You have more guns than, a third world country. What's it going to take? That deer I would have shot that deer. I tried to shoot it last night and I screwed up, And so what is it? Part of me was worried that he had such high expectations for a giant that he was never going to see that. It was never going to have the opportunity, and therefore at some point just say, screw it.
Yeah.
I'm done. I've spent all this money and time and I've wasted all this effort and I've not shot a big one. And he replied back and said, I really don't know. I thought there as I'm videoing this, watching this deer, why am I not shooting this deer? I have my gun here. I have all the equipment. We built this box blind in my backyard, for him. And and he said he was questioning it himself, like, why am I not pulling the trigger? And he said, eventually he just had to realize that was not the most important part of his hunting experience, was harvesting the animal. It was being there and seeing it was the most important thing for him. Is he going to give up and sell all his guns? No. He's going to be a gun fanatic till the day he dies, you know, and I consider him a phenomenal hunter, you know, that's hunted for decades. Does he have a wall of mounts and a box full of tags, you know? But he's just as dedicated as anybody else I know. Yeah. And so being honest with yourself and discovering why you want to be a hunter and what is the motivation, I think is extremely important. Self-awareness, you know, but it's also helpful when you're finding that mentor to tell them, you know, hey, the pressure's off. I don't necessarily care if I shoot one, but I would love to get to see some, you know, something or whatever. And when the mentor knows what your expectations are, then, man, it's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah.
Being honest with yourself and discovering why you are interested in hunting is really important.
And I would totally agree with that. I mean, the part of hunting that is difficult is getting that close to the animal.
Yes, yeah.
If you can do that, you can hunt anything.
Right.
That's the skill part. I mean, yes, there's quite a bit of skill in shooting long distance or something.
Right.
If you can get within 30, 20, 15 yards of a deer, you're a good hunter.
Yeah.
You know, regardless. And it's that kind of stuff that really kind of anchors you back down to the meltdowns that you had and stuff, because it's hard to separate, because I get upset too because you put in a lot of time and effort. I missed a pretty decent deer this year, and it's just like the stars have to align to have a successful hunt a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Like, you mess up one little thing and it's over. They're not out there to get shot. That's
I'm
not
never
their game.
messing up that particular way again.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a learning experience, and I have to tell myself that. Now, if I've been doing this for 20 years and I'm still making these same mistakes, maybe I should reconsider. But I've only got a few seasons under my belt. But I'm starting to get to that point too, that you were talking about with mentorship and stuff. Even I just have been very, very lucky to have the experiences I've had. Most people don't get to hunt with you on like their fifth hunting expedition ever, or with Derek. And I've just been incredibly lucky to have these experiences. And I have a friend now who's very interested, Seth, who you met out there. And the other day we were trout fishing in Oklahoma. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Astoundingly beautiful place. So congrats on having a wonderful state. And he hadn't been fishing in like 15 years. And I caught a few trout in the morning early on, and you know, I caught myself being more concerned about how he was doing. And it was just natural. I wasn't like, I just kind of, when I'm with new people, I lost that whole feeling of like, I don't care if I catch anything right now, because I saw him like, I know how to fish now. I've been fishing a lot, and I know when to set the hook, and I know what it feels like to have a fish, but he doesn't.
Yeah.
And I was thinking to myself, like, I want him to catch the fish. I hope he catches the biggest fish out of all of us. We were fishing with Chester Moore. Chester's been fishing since he was 5. You know, we've caught enough fish.
Right.
So I went over there, and I was just like, you know, I'm not the world's greatest fisherman, but I was like, you know, it's simple stuff. Like, he's holding his rod up here when I'm like, hold it down low, so when they bite, you have the leverage to pull up, and you can set the hook, because he kept missing the hook set. And it's like, to see, I watched him catch his first trout ever, and I got it on video, and I'm like, this is better than me catching the trout.
Yeah, isn't it?
Because I could come out here anytime. I could just call you or Chester and be like, hey, do you want to go fishing? And you guys would be
absolutely,
like, yeah.
Sure.
And it's amazing. And that feeling is so much better than me catching a fish.
You know, and guiding, when I was younger, thinking about guiding, not necessarily professional, but, you know, taking people out, I was selfish with my time and my resources, my opportunities, and I didn't necessarily, you know, if I guided somebody, that meant that I was taking an opportunity away from myself. And man, that has changed 180 degrees now. And I realized that those people that I've guided to their first deer or their first turkey or first fish, those are my trophies. And I'm more proud of those. And because, you know, even just logistically, we had to get 2 people right there.
Yeah, that's,
you know,
way harder, twice as hard.
Yeah, and you had to get, you know, you had to feel, you know, I mean, I think it can be a harder accomplishment to help someone experience hunting, successfully experience their first harvest, it's harder and exponentially more gratifying because you realize, I could have shot that deer 10 minutes ago, or whatever, or that turkey that, I could have got that bird much earlier, but whatever, we fumbled around and got lucky and he or she got this bird or deer or whatever, and I realized, you know what, that was a lot more challenging and harder. And that is where now where that feeds me.
Yeah.
I love hunting by myself. I do it a lot, but I try and make a purposeful effort to balance that with taking other people, and I don't even take a gun.
Yeah.
So that there's no way that I'll be,
tempted.
A part of it other than just making it real for them. And that is really where the greatest satisfaction comes from me.
Yeah, and I really have been thinking a lot about hunting and how to introduce people in a way that they have the highest chance of success. And I've started down every rabbit hole in hunting. Duck hunted the first time last year, squirrel hunted the first time last year, and I was thinking I think taking someone out on a small game hunt would be the most beneficial because you're having a higher chance of success on their first hunt. Because I'm not that skilled of a deer hunter, and it could just end up being the most boring day of their life, and they're stuck with me, which is going to make it even worse for them. So I've been thinking a lot about that, and I think there's also a mentality around hunting that I've been seeing a lot too, because I'm also in that social media world and have to deal with all that crap. And it just I get very disheartened because the narrative that I hear and see a lot is just continuously buy more stuff. It'll make you a better hunter. I mean, that's always been that way. The first hunting show ever to exist was sponsored by whatever new game thing came out.
Right.
But I've also found that that's really discouraging for a lot of new hunters too, because I mean, when you're talking about hunting, you are getting into an expensive realm.
Sure.
You can make it as expensive as you want. But I'm always telling people, especially where I live, you don't need X name brand popular trending thing. I shot my first deer in a coat I bought at Walmart.
Yeah.
For $25.
Sure.
And it's I always am you can buy a shotgun and you can buy some affordable camouflage and you can hunt.
Yeah.
That's all you need. Or if you want to be a bow hunter, you don't have to start out with a $3,000 Matthews bow. You can start out with a $500 Bear entry-level bow.
Right.
They still shoot projectiles.
Sure.
And they still hit things. So I don't know. Do you see that? I mean, you've been in this industry a lot longer than me. Has it always been that way, or is it just compounded with social media? It just really bothers me at my core because I feel like it makes people nervous.
I do see that social media has put an undue pressure on hunters to meet a certain criteria, whether that's with how much they're harvesting or with what they're wearing or what they're using to shoot with or whatever. However, being a self-professed equipment junkie and just liking equipment too, I understand that, and that's kind of like my buddy Dwayne. Like I said, he's got a whole garage full of every hunting knick-knack that has ever, been offered, and yet that's just as fun for him. And so I don't totally dismiss the need or the industry for bringing new products to the table, because that does keep a certain percentage of folks interested still.
Yeah.
But you're right, and I commend you for recognizing that small game is a great way to introduce someone, because 2 generations ago, my grandfather, for instance, never shot a white-tailed deer his entire life. He lived his entire life in Oklahoma. Why did he not shoot one? Because they didn't exist. There were hardly any white-tailed deer in our part of the country at that time. So he would have to go out of state to Colorado and shot mule deer. And I'm blessed to have several of the giant racks of bucks that he had shot. But so what did he do in between those trips to Colorado, that annual trip? He small game hunted. And that's what much of his generation was doing, including then, and the next generation to my dad. That's what they were doing. They were doing bird hunting and small game hunting because that was what was plentiful and readily available.
Yeah.
Now, I see this art or this tradition of small game hunting slowly kind of fading away, and we're on the brink of it just fading away forever because we've done such a great job across the country of managing deer and turkey and all kinds of other big game that that's the easy thing. It's no big deal to take an 8-year-old deer hunting and get their first deer anymore. It's pretty simple to do. If you're in the right place, they're going to have a chance. But small game hunting allows them so much more avenues to learn safe gun handling because they're mobile. Typically, they're going to have the chance to shoot, hopefully. And it keeps their interest. It keeps them interested. And then you could, even if you've got the best place to take them deer hunting and they've got, a 100% chance of harvesting one, I would say if you've got an equal opportunity to take someone small game hunting, do that first and build up to it. Because if they bypass it and shoot a big 8-point buck their first time out, they're not going to want to go on a squirrel. They just feel like that would be a step down, where it's really not, but it would feel that way.
Yeah.
So start them out that way and let them work up to something else and just hold that carrot, dangle that carrot out there for a deer hunt. But let's do a squirrel hunt. Let's do a quail hunt or a rabbit hunt or whatever.
Hey, what's up everyone? James Appleton here, co-founder of Absolute Aid. Welcome to the Seek to Do More program. This program will help you help yourself by developing the daily habits that will elevate your entire life. Over the next 30 days, you'll complete the doers list every single day. And the doers list includes 1, do something physical. 2, follow and stick to your diet of choice. 3, read a real book. 4, further your education on purpose. 5, dedicate time to your spiritual life. And 6, dedicate time to your hobbies. So if you're ready to take a structured, proven approach to build the daily habits that will allow you to get the most out of yourself, your time, and your life every single day, the Seek to Do More program is your blueprint. So make a choice, commit to yourself, sign up below, and let's get started.
I think it breaks the stereotype because there's like this weird stigma around small game, like rabbits or whatever. Most people don't have a problem with rabbits, but like squirrel. The first time I told somebody I was hunting and eating squirrel, they're like, that's disgusting. And it's just, game for people who don't hunt generally have that opinion about all game.
Sure.
But squirrel especially has this weird stigma to it. And it's amazing. It tastes great.
Sure.
It's just like an animal that eats nothing but like acorns and nuts. And
yeah,
it's at this point, I don't have any squeamishness towards any wild game. I've tried so much weird stuff that people have said is gross, and I've yet to find something that was offensive.
Yeah. I think it all really just depends on how it's prepared.
Correct.
And yeah, you can make a prime rib suck, if you just don't know what you're doing and do it wrong. It depends on how it's prepared. And yeah, that's a big stigma that a lot of people have is the taste. Oh, it's too gamey. Well, you need to try my recipe, or you didn't have it cooked the right way.
I don't even know what that means, gamey. Like, I understand that things taste different,
yeah.
But I guess it's just the difference between if people have only ever eaten chicken, beef, and pork for their whole life.
Yeah.
Something that tastes different than that is probably what I would consider gamey. But like, I ate deer every meal for a year.
Yeah.
And I was like, I actually prefer this now.
Sure.
It's so good.
Sure.
It tastes better to me. But, whatever. I mean, the food thing is a big deal for me because I think it's like just breaking a lot of stereotypes about wild game. And it's really important to me. But on a different topic, so how long have you been working for the state of Oklahoma? Like,
I've been going on 28 years.
28
now.
years.
Yeah.
So you've seen a lot of changes from the conservation side of things over 3 decades, essentially. And probably before that, you're aware of things. What are some of the biggest changes that you've seen made from 30 years ago till now in the conservation world? Because that's where I'm at. I'm studying the history of conservation, and it's crazy to see how far things have changed.
Sure. You know, there's some things, and I'm primarily thinking of my own home turf, Oklahoma, but there were conservation messages that we hammered home for decades that had a very specific purpose of growing wild populations of whatever, deer and turkey primarily in Oklahoma. And we hammered those messages home, and we accomplished what those messages were meant to accomplish, so much so now that we're having to change the message. And, you know, you mentioned the North American conservation model, which is phenomenal and it's unique compared to the rest of the world. And that primarily hinges on using hunters as the primary management tool. You know, in Oklahoma, and I know every state, Ohio, Texas, wherever, you're manipulating hunter success through regulation. Now, for some people, government's just a bad word, no matter how you spell it, and they don't like it, and it's oppressive, and it's the man bringing me down, and all that. But these regulations, hunting regulations, are specifically designed to achieve certain objectives. And so in Oklahoma, when at the turn of the last century, we didn't have any deer in Oklahoma, pretty much to speak of. Didn't have our first deer season until in the 30s. So I don't remember. But anyway, somewhere in there, we had our first deer season, and it was a very controlled, regulated thing. You didn't shoot a doe. It was just for bucks and so on. And so the message for decades was, don't shoot your does. That's your breeding population. Those are your baby makers, and you need those to grow the population. Well, deer are running out our ears in Oklahoma. We issue depredation permits by the thousands to landowners because they'll walk out and have 300 deer out on their winter wheat, and that's their livelihood. So we issue them extra permits to shoot them out of season and more than the normal regulations allow. And so what we came upon 20 years ago is the need to convince our hunting populations that shooting does was not a bad thing anymore. In fact, we spun it that if you're a true conservationist, you'll shoot does. You'll shoot all the law allows, and you'll take everybody you know, and you'll shoot does. And I can remember a planning session my division had. We rented a lodge at a state park for 2 or 3 days, locked ourselves in there, and came up with a campaign to try to convince hunters to shoot does. And so we did all these little group sessions, breakout sessions, brainstorming. We came up with the slogan, "Hunters in the know, take a doe." And so
it's got a nice ring to it.
Yeah. And so, and now it is really cool to hear people just say that all the time, or see it on their bumper stickers on their trucks or whatever. "Hunters in the know, take a doe." You asked what has changed? Well, the mentality of what's good to do has changed significantly in many places. We now are just starting this spring to launch a new campaign, and it's very much the same thing, but it's largemouth bass. There will be guys my age and older that will think it's a cardinal sin. It's blasphemy to keep a bass.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, you release all bass. Bass are catch and release.
Yeah,
that's why we have big bass. Catch and if you want big bass, you got to put them back. You hear the old thing when you're fishing. You let some fish go. Okay, go back and make some babies. Tell your grandma to come bite my lure. Whatever. And that whole mentality is if you want big bass, you got to throw all your bass back. Our biologists have the data on most of our lakes that our bass are peaked out and not necessarily stunted, but they're not reaching their potential because there's too many bass. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be an uphill battle, but we're going to have to convince anglers to keep bass.
Is the message around are you anything you catch, or is it certain size?
Small fish is what we're encouraging. We've shaped our regulations around, once again, because regulations are our most effective and we get the most results and the most immediate results from regulations because we're shaping our hunters and anglers' harvest. And it's strategic and it's on purpose. Mm-hmm. And so we changed our regulations this year to allow smaller fish and to be kept, and we're encouraging that. That's going to be a hard sell.
Well, what do you consider small in Oklahoma, I guess? What would a keeper size be potentially?
A good fish that we would like you to keep is everything under 3 pounds, everything under 4 pounds. Okay. Keep it. The 1 pound fish, you've probably been to farm ponds, or in Texas they call them tanks, which I think is weird, but they call ponds tanks. But
they do things different down
there. It's like a whole other country down there.
I just heard a gun click outside. Yeah. No, I'm just kidding.
So, you've been to ponds where you catch nothing but 1 pound fish every cast. And that's on a much smaller scale in a little isolated pond. And you understand the management philosophy that, there's a finite amount of food. If I want bigger fish, then I've got to thin out the fish population so the remaining fish will have more food per fish to grow bigger. I mean, that's just simple science. So we're looking at that at a statewide level and saying, you know what, our lakes have an untapped potential that they could reach if we truly just thinned out the population.
I need to figure out. It's different in Michigan where I fish a lot. I don't fish as much in Ohio. I'm right on the border. Mm-hmm. And my both sides of my family, my wife's side and my parents' side my grandparents have places on lakes in Michigan. I need to see. Lakes are weird because not all of them are state-owned, or I don't know how it all works. I haven't really found the literature that I need to find to understand the process right. I want to figure out what it would take to get a biologist in there to look at some of these lakes because I fish like a son of a gun all summer long. I mean, you will not see me if we're at the lake, everybody's hanging out and chilling. I'm in a kayak and you will not see me until I'm hungry. Yeah. And the two lakes are drastically different in night and day. I can go to one lake and just kill crappie left and right. I mean, I can just crappie fanatic. Go to the next lake and it's the bass lake. I can just get bass, big, decent sized bass. But the one my grandma's has a place on is, I'm catching only dinks. The biggest bass I ever caught in there was 12 inches. Yeah. And it's that in Michigan, you can only keep them. I think they have to be 14 and above to keep. Okay. And I'd be interested to have a biologist come in and look and say, these bass, there's so many small bass in here that they're out competing, which makes sense. Yeah. And I don't know what a solution would be because if it's not managed, people they're doing whatever they're doing in there. Mm-hmm. It's interesting to think about because management is a very important tool for size for bass, especially because I've read stuff on ponds. Mm-hmm. If you put X amount too many bluegill in a pond, they're going to overpopulate the pond. They're going to crowd out or X or crappie or bass. Yeah. You switch those numbers around. These lakes here are managed. I've never seen bass this big in my life. Yeah. I can't catch a small bass in this lake, it seems like. So it would be interesting to take a look at that because I want to figure out what I can do personally to help the lake. If I got to keep every bass under a certain size, I'll do it. I'll eat them all day long. Bass have a stigma of taste, which I think is just associated with that ideology of letting them grow.
Yeah.
Because I remember eating bass as a kid. We never complained about it. It was just another fish we ate.
Yeah.
It's weird.
The lakes are I don't want to say easier to manage, but they're a confined, defined situation, and you do have a little bit maybe more control over it than, say, a big giant wildlife management area. I don't know, maybe not. That's maybe unfair to say, but I would venture to say that there's information out there that the Michigan DNR has, and that they already have some idea about that lake. Our biologists in Oklahoma, if we're doing, I'm sure everyone else is doing it, we have so many lakes that they can't survey an electroshock every single lake every year. So they're like on a 3-year rotation. Each region of our state, they put their lakes in that region on a 3-year rotation, and they'll electrofish them. And it's a very scientific thing. If you come to Oklahoma, I'll put you on an electrofish shocking boat for fun.
That'd be great.
Just to experience it. But it's a pretty scientific kind of thing. I mean, it's on a timer. They shock a route. There's a route on the lake. They do it for a certain amount of time each time. They net everything that floats, and then they measure and then release fish and catalog it all and keep all the stats of what they fish. They have catch rates per hour, and that will tell you densities, then they'll keep all their size data. I would say that there's information out there on those lakes out there, and it's the biologists. Many times I find that most generally our hardcore biologists that know the most say, okay, this is my life, this is what I do, it's my job, and I'll make regulations or make regulation suggestions to help achieve management objectives. But biologists, most of them are not readily forthcoming with their findings. It's not that they're keeping it a secret. It's just like, well, I need this information to make, sound management decisions. They don't think of it as much as, wow, this would be great information to share with the public. Yeah. So it's possible there's information out there. If you call the Michigan DNR and ask them if they have information on those different lakes or what the objectives are on those lakes. Because every one of our lakes is managed independently and separate because they're different variables on every lake.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's just an excuse of how bad I am at catching fish in the lake, honestly, But, I've thought about doing sneaky stuff because I got a fish finder. There ain't a structure on the bottom of one of those lakes to save your life. And I was like, what if I just accidentally dropped a pine tree in there for my Christmas tree? Would anybody really care? I don't know. Yeah. But I'm pretty sure I shouldn't say that. But, I'm just thinking from a conservation mindset, I want this fish to be happy and healthy.
Yeah.
But so you have, again, you've been doing this for a long time. You've made your life out of this. What advice do you have to someone like me who, I will be doing this for the rest of my life. There's no chance that I would ever do this. If I get bored of this, there's something wrong with me. Like, send me to the hospital, check me. But I just, for longevity's sake, I can't imagine myself getting bored of this ever because it's just, each segment of hunting has a rabbit hole. Deer hunting, rabbit hole. Duck hunting, rabbit hole. Fishing, rabbit hole. Species specific, rabbit hole. They can never end. But I'm very much in the realm of I want to do it all. But that's expensive. That's a big time commitment. How do you avoid it? I know at some point I'll get frustrated and have a burnout at some point, I'm sure. Yeah. How do you keep that fun for a long time? I know I'll get better too, but...
Yeah, there are phases when I look back on my hunting career, and think about, you mentioned duck hunting. Man, I was a fanatic. I had 16 dozen goose decoys, and And I would combine those with buddies, and we'd have 500 to 1,000 decoys out there, and I don't do any of that anymore. I sold the decoys, and I haven't been goose hunting in years, other than to film them for work. I haven't gone on an actual legit goose hunt myself in many years, and I don't necessarily miss it because I found passion in other things, and I just think that the world of hunting has so many different opportunities out there. You might find that it's deer hunting that you love the most, say, for instance, but how do you keep that interesting and that passion alive for 50 years? Well, maybe you become a method hunter, and it's all about how you're taking these deer. Mm-hmm. I have a younger guy on my lease with me, 27 years old. I've been with him since he was a real little kid, and had the privilege of taking him on a lot of his firsts. First coyote, first turkey, first goose, first pheasant, first bobcat, all these firsts in his life. And for a 27-year-old, he's not your typical 27. He's experienced a lot.
Yes.
And taken a lot of deer, a lot of turkeys. But what he has found to keep his passion alive now is it's all about the how. Mm-hmm. So he borrowed a pistol from our other buddy, Dwayne, that has more guns than a third world country.
It's always good to have a buddy like that.
Yeah, and he said, okay, my objective this year, my goal is I want to shoot a deer with a handgun. Mm-hmm. And then we were shed hunting a few weeks ago, and he was looking at, we have a lot of bodark trees. Osage orange is another name, but that's what many, many Native Americans made their longbows out of, was bodark. And so he's like, my goal now is I want to find a bodark on our place, cut it down, build my own bow, and then shoot a deer from on the same property that I cut the tree down from.
Wow.
And so that's like, he sets goals for himself like that, and now he's in this method stage of a hunter. It's all about the how. And when you go down that rabbit hole, it never ends. You can put all these types of self-limiting restraints on yourself to up the challenge. I went through that too. I'm not as much into about that now as I used to be, about the how and what I'm using, but there's always another different type of unique challenge out there. Maybe you over the years you find you've got a gun safe with 7 different calibers that you can shoot deer with, and you set a goal and said, I want to shoot my limit this year of 5 deer, one with a different caliber for each, or something like that. Yeah. There's just all these different challenges you put on yourself. My challenge this year for me was not about the harvest per se, but I've rigged up my truck to camp out of.
Yeah.
And so I didn't meet my goal, but I want to collectively through our 3.5 month deer season, I want to total a month worth of staying in that thing during deer season. Boy. I went to 29 days this year. So I guess if you count February as a month, I surpassed, but I want to do like 31 nights, not straight, but throughout the 3.5 month season. And so that's what it's about for me now is I didn't even shoot a deer, this whole season. I had deer within 10 yards nearly every hunt. It only got skunked once or twice the whole year where I didn't see a deer on that particular morning or evening hunt. So it's not about the opportunity. I had the opportunities. I just had a different goal for myself, and that's kind of what keeps me going.
Yeah, and I realize personally that I think I'm exploring all these different hunting realms to find one of the ones I really like.
Yeah.
Like I've done duck hunting, I've done goose hunting, I've gone deer hunting, I've gone fly fishing, I've gone fishing with sharks with Derek in the ocean. I've done it all at this point, And I think I'm just trying to find the ones that I enjoy. And right now I do think it's waterfowl. I don't know what, everybody seems to have their waterfowl stage, and that's where I'm at right now, because deer is challenging and I like it and I enjoy it. But there's something about like hanging out with your buddies in a blind and just BSing all day.
You don't have to be quiet. You can move around. You can cook breakfast in the blind. And
it's a different ball game.
Yeah, there's no way that I will ever, at the end of my life, say I did it all, because there's so much to do. You know, in the turkey world, the new fad thing is a 410 shotgun. You know, because shooting with a 12 gauge is too easy, and then 20 gauge, that's too easy. So, 410s are now the new cool fad challenge for turkey hunters. And for deer hunters, there's always something new out there. Like, have you done muzzleloader hunting yet? Man, that is so fun. That's what my daughter Emily really likes. She likes kind of the recipe of measuring out the powder and the bullet and packing that and all that. She loves all that part of it, and putting the primer on. I mean, I've got a 45 caliber and a 50, so she's only shot the 45. So when she discovers I have a 50 caliber, she's like, "Ooh, now I want to shoot deer with that," and there's so many rabbit holes, like you said. I don't think that I will have ever said that I've done it all, experienced everything, but I definitely have my favorites, that I go back to, that I really look forward to.
Well, you've had a career of doing a lot of different things, and especially when you're on TV, you get to do a lot of cool stuff. Like even doing the podcast, I've got to do a lot of cool stuff that I never thought I'd do. And TV is just a different avenue of that, and it's people are excited to share their stories and things like that. But is there something that you haven't got to do yet that's on the list? Maybe when that retirement age rolls around, or
there's a couple things that I've done before, but I haven't done in decades. I haven't been elk hunting in over 25 years. And I've got elk before with a muzzleloader, in Colorado. And I went many times with buddies, and I bought out of, this was literally before the internet, when you put classifieds in the newspaper to sell stuff. I bought a complete elk outfitter camp. It came with a 10 by 12 wall tent, a wood burning stove, cots, everything. Literally, the ad said, just, pack your clothes and your gun and you could go elk hunting with this whole setup. I've still got all that. And I haven't used it in years, so I've got one of my best friends lives in Colorado, and he bugs me every year saying, "Hey, applications are open now, are you going to put in at least for a preference point, and I haven't done it. So I miss that terribly, and life just got away from me, and I want to elk hunt some more. And you love turkey hunting. Elk hunting is like the next notch up. Elk hunting during the rut is just like hunting giant furry turkeys.
Oh, that sounds great.
It's incredible. You're calling back and forth. There's strategy on how you call. You're setting up. You're mobile, running and gutting, hearing them bugle. You're responding back. I mean, it is awesome. And I haven't done it in years, so I'm looking forward to getting to elk hunt again.
Yeah, well, Todd, it's always a pleasure talking to you. I can't wait to see what we can get into for the rest of this weekend here at the Huntfish Podcast Summit. Before we wrap up, where can people find you? Where can people learn more about the television show? It's a great show. I watch it on YouTube every once in a while when it pops up. Good
Outdoor Oklahoma on YouTube, and we've got a channel. Hit the subscribe.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And then our agency's website's wildlifedepartment.com.
All right. Well, thank you so much, man. We're gonna get out of here, get you on some more podcasts, and we'll have a good, awesome weekend. We got to get you a Mondo bass out of that podcast.
That'd be awesome. Yeah.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Aptitude Outdoors podcast. If you're getting anything out of this, if you're learning something, if it's helped you in any way, go down in the link below and buy me a coffee. Throw me $1, throw me $2. We greatly appreciate it. Just using it to keep this ship afloat. So thank you very much.